shorthand. It'll save so much time at work.
Is this the seat? Is that where you're gonna go?
The one.
Hot seat.
Do we have to pull up the email version of the,
Well, that's been
I'm
printed
gonna
for
do
us.
that big old study. I think this is in here. Okay, so we're reconvening now, our finance budget review meetings with the Board of Selectmen as well, and leading off the afternoon is Jim Clyde from the Highway Department. Welcome. Tab 12, for those of you who are following along at home.
Guys, what the hell then?
Channel 12.
Everyone at home is now turning their buck to 12.
Couple of cookies and we're all sweet and full of sugar, Jim.
I wouldn't say we're all sweet.
I'm a little scared Paul has crayons.
Why am I the only one with crayons? I thought you brought them.
In case you get bored.
Right, that's all I'm getting going.
Got a BlackBerry for that.
How appropriate.
I'm not sure how you guys are doing this, so.
Talk us through what, what's different about this year versus next year, your level staffing budget, and then what's in your mission budget and why, I guess?
Capital.
And capital, for sure.
Well, we level staff, the level staffing one, and it actually came in a little bit cheaper because we have a couple of new people, so they're at a reduced rate. We've had a person out on long-term disability since April of 2013, so that's put quite a hurt on the department, being shorthanded for a year and a half.
Is that resolved, or?
It's getting close.
I'm sorry?
It's getting close.
Great.
Closer.
Okay.
Much closer.
So I think you guys got it late, but we had done a study of the department through the Collins Center at UMass. A lot of pages to it, to see where our deficiencies were and what they thought about staffing levels, and that's pretty much where the mission budget comes from. Is I'm basically treading water myself with when Eric Derling, the former superintendent engineer, retired. Then he went to 15 hours a week, then he went to no hours a week. So we've been kind of treading water. We've hired an engineering company, but that doesn't get us anything in the management side of things. So we're looking to hopefully hire some type of an engineer for the office to pick up some of the slack. And that's one of the things in the mission budget. And the that will help quite a bit in the office and the field with inspections, plans, and can help other departments too reviewing plans. They hire engineers to do that peer review stuff. So we're hoping that could be done. One of the things from the evaluation, it said the basically park division is way understaffed. It's supposed to be one person per 8 to 10 acres of grass. We have 2 people for 62 acres of grass. So we're again, treading water. We end up sending highway people or highway division people to parks all the time to keep them at least at 2. So then we run short staff all the time.
Turf fields may have helped that?
What's that?
Turf fields may have helped that?
I don't know about that.
Sure would, you wouldn't have to cut them.
Just have to
You
sweep 'em.
sanitize them every week.
So that doesn't,
Hose them down, right? Hose them, they get so hot.
that's someone else's fight. Until that happens, we're looking for a couple additional bodies to fill that out, and that would be beneficial to us. quite a bit.
Are you saying there's an overlap between the Parks Department and what you're doing with the Highway Department?
We,
handles the
What
field.
he- he knows all the money.
They are the
Yeah.
Parks Department.
So in this case, you are the Parks Department?
yes,
They provide-
that's why we call it the Parks Division.
Okay.
You know, it's all run out of our facility. We supply the equipment and the manpower, and basically the Park Division is staffed by the same people all the time. Again, between vacations and sick leave and different things.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
So would these two head count be full-time, 52-week-a-year people, or would
Yes.
they be during the park season, if you will, or
They would be
year-round?
year-round,
Okay,
because we can use them for plowing.
okay, yeah.
And, I mean, we still do maintenance in the winter, we do tree maintenance during the winter. There's not a lot of park, things, but I mean,
Yep.
we do go out and trim back the fields, but they go out on tree crews. Because we have a tree truck, we borrow the light department's chipper, and we put a ground crew out. So there are things that we can do.
But Bonnie, we don't do cross-charging for any of this, right? So if you look at the Parks Department and their deficit right now, it's really larger than even they're saying, because Jim is doing some of the work, so that's more work for those programs that's not getting funded.
Right, Jimmy maintains the
Lot.
fields, and it also affects the school department. I mean,
Right.
if he weren't doing this work, then either the school or recreation would have to.
Have to pay for it
Yep.
to do it, yep. Okay.
We're supposed to have a three-party agreement that it's the selectmen, the school committee, and the park commission, that we supply the personnel and the equipment. The recreation commission supplies the funding for the materials, and then they have a deal worked out with the school to use the inside of the school for a program and things like that.
But the stuff they buy, like fertilizer, like they would buy that? Or what, when you say they buy stuff, what would that be?
Yeah, fertilizer.
Fertilizer, things like
paint,
that, okay.
yeah. And the budget's, it used to be around $26,000 for that. One of the small things, trying to move my office manager up a little bit she kind of took over while I was out on my injury. She's pretty resourceful and, in my opinion, worthy of moving up. She moved up once to the title that she is, and we're kind of unique, the things that we do down there. We're not the same as other departments. She's not just a secretary. She does quite a bit of the putting the bid packages together, procurement and things, and she's really good at keeping us in line. She refers to Bonnie quite a bit on that stuff, but our stuff is pretty technical, and make sure that happens.
Has that been brought forward to the personnel committee yet, Jim?
No. Because, this is the first step, I guess, of what you want to do. I think that was about it for the mission budget.
I was curious, can I just ask about, the one thing they talked about, this asset management program software, to track and control the road infrastructure. I didn't, if that's specific to the infrastructure, I was just thinking that, the PNBC has this other thing for all the assets and the maintenance required and so on. Is that a similar thing that you could use that same package, or is this very specific to roads?
It's very specific that there's a few companies that do it. We had started this study in 2000. And they went and drove all the roads and evaluated them and, measured them and did all kinds of stuff and put this all in a giant database. And it's supposed to track the life cycle of pavement, and so it's supposed to give you parameters of when to do certain maintenance, and a certain amount of money that you're supposed to spend, and then you can put different scenarios of funding sources. When Eric was here, we were supposed to spend, we used to throw a number, $500,000 a year, and we're spending half of that. And at the end of the time frame, our pavement was they call it the pavement condition index, was exactly the same. So we should have downgraded. So he kind of complained to the company saying, there's something wrong with your spreadsheets. Either I'm the greatest guy in the world, or your mathematics is not working correctly. And so we're kind of like on the fence of whether does it work correctly. It's, we'd put $60,000 or $70,000 into it. It's really easy to go on the thing and measure a road, but for 70 grand, we're like, it's an awful lot of money.
Right.
But now they're really pushing it again, that it's, they're trying to get the towns to really do that as a budgeting tool. So we've contacted the company that we have because our computers are too old to support it, that we have currently, and they've upgraded. So they've given us a price in there. It's like $24,000 to upgrade it.
What's that, Jeff? Does he know that? I think we ought to find out at least whether the other service that we have now for all the other maintenance, if there's a capability in there for roads.
It might be a compromise.
It might be something that's already there. We may already.
Maybe
have
I'll
to
ask
do
the
this.
question in
Yeah,
the back of the
that's
room.
what I said, Jeff, right?
Yep.
Hey, Jeff? Jeff? Question on the software you're using now to track all the assets and the maintenance required and so on, the planning for that? Jim is being advised by some of his I don't know how,
Highway professionals.
professional groups and so on, that he should be using some software to do the same thing for roads. And we wonder if there was a capability in the service that we have for all our other assets to also accommodate roads in there.
I would think we'd be able to. We can add buildings to this program we have now. When we initially set it up, we had only so much money to expend on the project, so it shows the facilities, the buildings that we had needed to do. But at any point, you can add it on, so I would.
Could you ask them about roads in particular, and then whatever aspects of that we want to, you use a mile, or how do they, however they index those in terms of their condition and so on, and when maintenance is needed, and what maintenance is needed,
Yeah, we can do that.
before we spend money on another program? Find out? Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that. We also have, that I'll be bringing up in a few minutes too, is the parking lot issues at the various schools. And that kind of falls into, some of it into Jimmy's stuff too, but we've included all of this in,
Okay,
because they did.
thank you. Sorry, but any place that we can use what we got rather than buying something new, right? Okay.
Without knowing what theirs is.
I know,
think it'd
exactly.
be,
That's why I just said we gotta
We'll find out.
connect the dots here and then figure out whether there's any good to be had.
Can I go back to something?
Sure.
You're talking about the possibility of, in the future, hiring an engineer instead of farming it out the way you do now. Will it wash, is it more expensive, or?
Two different things, because we're still gonna need an engineer to do the road design. It's more the office stuff. We don't have an office, to do that, a lot of that stuff's computerized now, and it gets done by 3 or 4 or 5 different people in their office, depending on what their specialty is in the office, between the survey and things like that. It probably would help, like we have what they call the resident engineer out on the road right now, spending a fair amount of money on that. We could probably lessen that cost. They could do small designs, I think, in-house, but I don't think we'd be able to get rid of the design engineers completely. Maybe over time, depending on, what this person has and what their capabilities are.
So, I don't know if I guess the other thing, because you obviously have a lot in here, you got a lot of ideas from here, and obviously a lot of things you need to get done. And when I say here, that was your big study here that I haven't read yet, 100 pages.
107.
Because, 107, excuse me. But obviously, the difference between your level staffing and mission budget is significant. It would be interesting if we could break some of those down, maybe those components out, so, it may end up being it's not one or the other, but there's someplace in between, right? And I guess the priority of different additions in there, right? The different people and the different positions and so on.
Yeah, I'm not sure, you have to refer to Bonnie, because if all those are benefit eligible, I think there's a substantial, with 3 full-time bodies, it's gonna add a significant amount. I can't sustain the work level that I'm doing now.
Right,
Just not gonna happen.
right.
So, you know, something has to give, and we've been, you know, patient pretty long.
Right.
You know, in the park department, I just wasn't sure, you know, we never knew what to refer to, and we know, again, same thing, dying a slow death, we just can't keep up, we're just basically treading water to make it happen. You know, and that doesn't even put us, if you add 2 bodies, it doesn't even put you to what they recommend the staffing.
Right.
Yeah, but to Bonnie's point, to the point here, the level says 674K for 12.1, and then 838 for 12.18 FTE. I'm looking at the level staffing, department total, the salaries, and then the mission. So I look at 2 end lines, department total, the level at 674,000, and the FTE is 12.1.
You know, I'll bet it's not correct, that formula's probably flawed.
Mistake.
I'll check that.
So perhaps, when we say it's a significant difference, there's a math error there. But maybe the difference isn't that big.
Well, they're not capped
Well,
on the
3 people are probably gonna be $150,000.
Yeah, because I think they had the engineer pegged at,
Yeah. 3 people probably is $150,000 or whatever it's on.
No, it's 12.1 and 12.18.
Oh, I'm not even looking at the numbers. Oh, I don't even,
Just looking at the
I wasn't
FTE
looking at
against
that,
the,
okay.
Well, I guess we could treat it like the school department, it doesn't matter, Paul, right? It's only a...
Chris, it's there.
Well, I mean, as you were saying earlier with the school department, should we not worry about it?
Point
Are
out
you
that-
talking about one position
You
or...
want to be a wise guy about it. Point
Well, I
out-
mean, you're not even talking about a full FTE. I mean, how many
All right.
FTEs are in the school department?
All right, Jimmy, what else do you want to tell us?
Okay, kid.
Specific things that came out of that study that you'd like to highlight, aside from, I mean, I know this
Those
isn't
are
reflecting
the
your
sort of-
budget, but,
some of them we weren't gonna engage in right now, we're gonna try and work on. One of them is the basically internal reporting, doing work orders and stuff. We're working on a couple of things right now. You know, we're not sure if we're ready to jump into that, because we don't really know. We just, you know, this thing's a year late. It's supposed to be done in December of 13, and we're getting it in
If I
October
could-
performance
14.
clause in the contract for that?
If I could, though, the main point in having the management study done for highway operations was that there was universal recognition that there's too much on Jim Clyde's plate, and that we needed to better organize the highway department in order to get the most that we can out of Jim and his staff, because they have an awful lot to offer. And
And to do that, we hired a consultant who gives a report a year late.
well, there's,
It's 107 pages, Paul.
So we, it took them a year to do the report, and we are on the 2nd or 3rd consultant who was assigned the task, but we finally got the one who stayed behind to finish the report.
I just hope they don't do master plans too.
They, no, they don't, but I'd be glad to talk to you about, we can do one for the chief afterwards. So the purpose of the study was to see how we can best support Jim, and we saw that it's really the technical, I mean, Jim's the field marshal, he's great with the operations, but there are some basic administrative and office functions that he needs assistance on. It's great that his office manager is as capable and can do as much as we can put on her plate, but there is a whole menu of things which it would help to have an engineering background, that if we could bring a technician on, not a PE, but someone with a technical background, that would free up Jim's time to a great degree and allow him to focus on the things that he needs to do as the head of the department, but also getting the in-house assistance at a quality level where, I mean, one of the things in interacting with the consulting engineers, we don't have an engineer on staff to interact with their engineers. If we had someone with the engineering technical assistance, we could probably I'm sure we could better manage that consulting engineer function to the point where we're realizing some cost savings. But certainly, Jim needs the help, and we need to have a better structure in order to have highway do all the things that we ask of the highway department.
I completely accept that Jim needs more help to do the work, but on the engineering level, and we've been down this road before, I mean, this was, you know, when we brought in an engineer, we thought we were gonna be cutting out outside engineering service. That isn't ended up what happened. We had an engineer in the house, which, and as good as he was at other things, running the department, he hired the outside engineer.
Incorrect.
Well, I mean, I remember Eric saying, you know, he doesn't do any engineering himself.
He did, the only thing he didn't design is Goldsmith Street. We hired an engineer because we were going through another program, because that was a big, big job. All the other roads, he designed himself, until he left, and then we hired Green International.
Remember interactions with him before, where he just said he didn't have the time to do the engineering in-house, and had to farm it out.
Most of the stuff he did himself, I mean, he was there 15 years.
I know it was. He was, you know, you worked welding with him. And at the time when he left, I mean, if that was such a good working relationship, I don't know why we didn't continue with the engineering. The reason we didn't continue with an engineer is we weren't getting a lot of engineering. We were getting more management services out of them than we were engineering services.
I think it's because times were tough and you didn't want to replace him.
Well, we did it, well.
Whatever, we need to do something.
Right.
Meanwhile, in 2014,
Are these three full-time bodies consistent with the results of that study that was just submitted, that
Yeah, that's what it
they're
says. Hire an
finding,
engineering
so
staff.
translate to, we need three
that we're
bodies?
correctly staffed for the highway function, we are understaffed for the park function, and that we needed to have an engineering, some engineering function in-house. Capability.
One of the things, you know, if you read it, and when I had talked to the consultant when he was in one of the times, he said we're adequately staffed on highway, and I kind of disagreed until I thought about it, and because we shuffle the people to the park department, that's why if we stay on highway task, we can get it done. So he says that, you know, we need one person for 8 to 10 miles of road, so if you count out the people, we're correctly staffed. And then in his next breath, he says we should contract out street sweeping and catch basin cleaning. So, you know, what I'm hearing is we're adequately staffed, then why do we need to outsource? But then it's because then you can get more done. What's the cost to outsource? So there's some things to think about on some of it. You know, I got some pricing on catch basin cleaning and things like that, but you know, because he goes into the equipment costs and things like that. What's the per basin cost over the time of the equipment and stuff like that. So I don't agree with, he also says we should sweep 8 to 10 miles of road a day, and not going to happen. I mean, that says we'd be done sweeping our town in 6 to 10 days. You know,
How long does it take you now?
2.5 months.
Jeez. So are a lot of his
No,
numbers
it's
way
just-
off, or is just?
No, he uses the industry standard, and
Standards.
I'm not sure if that's, you know, because
Country
he,
roads.
Yeah,
It's
right.
not
referred to
country
like
roads,
Right,
yeah.
in a perfect
things
world,
like
we'd
that.
have industry standards, right, yeah.
you know.
They don't have New Estate Road in mind when they say that, right?
And so it's, you know, that's just one thing that I picked out of
Yeah.
it, that, you know, we agreed, and he said we should sweep our streets 3 times a year. You know, I agree in the city, that's probably what they need to do, because you're picking up trash, but we're not doing that. And he also said our sweeper's old and we should get a new one. And I disagree with that, so.
I can fix this. I got 20 more years in this machine. You don't know me. Right, other questions for Jim from anybody?
Do we have any large purchases that we need to make this year?
Always,
Yeah.
always.
We're probably the biggest equipment
Yeah.
or, you know, stuff in the town, and I make the joke every year, I got 4 more years and we'll be running antique plates on some of our trucks.
But any, like, you know,
It's in here,
backhoes, I
yeah.
know a
Yeah, I
while
have-
ago
It's in
you had
here.
I mean, I could explain a little bit about that. I mean, I don't know how much time you want to go on that.
The highlights.
Highlight the big ones
We're,
for this year.
we have a 1992 backhoe at our transfer station.
Yep.
10,000 hours on it. It's in pretty tough shape. It only goes to the stays at the transfer station, but it's getting old. What we'd like to do is take our current backhoe, which I think is a 2004, and shift that to the transfer station, get us a new one. We could still use that one because it's still roadworthy and it's in really good shape. We're also trying to buy a mini excavator, which a lot of the towns are doing because they're just more efficient in the work that you can do. Because now with everybody coming up with these new drainage systems, you have to go in and clean them out, and you can't get in there with a rubber-tired machine. Plus, you know, you can spin around on yourself, put it into a truck, so you take up less road space. With the amount of traffic that's out, it's a little bit easier. One of the things I'd like to do is basically trade in our grader towards that, because we don't have any dirt roads. We used to use it in the winter for scraping ice off, but because we're using the salt, we don't have the ice pack that we used to. So it's an asset that's basically withering away to nothing because we don't use it.
Are you going to be rebuilding recommend rebuilding any of the trucks, the frame? Was it the one that had a frame problem?
Yeah, we have
or
one that
something?
has a crack developed in the frame. We had it fixed, and he says we can get through the winter, but if it develops another crack, you have to weld it. We did get one price. From memory, it's like 20 to 25,000. This is a 10-wheel truck. It's really not that old. It was a little bit of a surprise. So I guess we had already put the budget in, and we're not sure if that should be in this capital budget or how we want to deal with that. We can't get it done now because now we're into the, I can't afford to have it down for 3 weeks now.
Okay. But
Sounds like an emergency purchase for the FinCom to approve.
Troublemaker over here.
Before or after the turf field?
Yeah, what's the priority? Isn't there some magic mitigation fund around that we can grab it from?
Here we go.
You should go see the planning board. They're in charge of handing out money, as we were told the other night.
Wow, this is, poor Jim.
Yeah, look how you started. It seems so mild-mannered, but
Watch out for the quiet one.
I didn't start anything, so.
you didn't. No, you did.
You did, you're great, Jim. You were Jim's.
So, I mean,
Okay.
So the rebuild is in your plan?
yeah, I don't.
It's probably not. It should be. I mean, if the.
Well, I
truck
think
isn't-
this got submitted right when that was
Okay.
coming up, and we weren't really sure whether it had to be done right then, because we were, you know, this guy's a little more liberal up there. We weren't even sure if we would be able to get him to say, yes, it's safe to use, to put liability onto himself. And he was like, all right. He was, you know, he's from New Hampshire, and he gave us a really good deal on the repair, too. It was very reasonable. And they're the ones that did the frames on the other trucks, too, so they're knowledgeable in the, it's a double frame truck, so that's why I'm not terribly worried about it.
But it's something that you don't want to keep on the road long-term, the way it is. You should
I mean, it needs to get repaired,
need repair,
definitely.
right? So it should be in, at least in your plan for this budget cycle, and if we can get it, we can fit it in, we'll fit it in. If not, we'll have to wait, but
It's just
at
wise
least
to
get
have
it up there, yeah.
properly working tools.
Absolutely. Yeah,
This is not
absolutely.
a luxury, it's a tool.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, it's
Safety, and
it's a needed item, I mean.
Right.
Yeah, just make sure it's in, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything for us?
Crayon?
No, I'm good, thanks. I mean, I'm not sure, maybe if we don't have enough money to buy pens, I can use those, but
Thanks, Sandy. Thank you,
not
Sandy,
my
for the
plan.
cookies, too.
Thank you, Jimmy.
okay, I'm supposed to wait because of Jeff, too, so.
Yeah, where's that go? Is there here, Paul? Are you?
Tab 2, because FinCom is number 1, right?
Okay.
Always.
Yeah.
Just ask Jim.
Didn't see the FinCom budget on.
$75,000 reserve
It's
for
hard to
finance
find.
budget.
It's in there.
It's in there.
It's in Bonnie's budget.
Yeah, $700.
Right, that's it.
Yeah, we got big bucks.
Talk to us about that.
Buy some crayons.
Okay, so several budgets to talk about here. I'm just going to follow along in the
Okay.
order in which the numbers are that
15 minutes.
we have. The first one is the selectmen's budget. Let me say selectmen and town administrators budget, the staffing level for the level staffing and the mission budget is the same. They're both looking to maintain both of them are looking to maintain the existing staffing level of one town administrator and one executive assistant.
Who's our stipend?
The stipend.
There you go.
Didn't I bring?
Write it in.
Got some crayons.
Have an
for
extra
you.
sandwich.
Want some crayons?
Putting one in my
So-
purse to go.
And and we're just level funding the expenses in the budgets as well. The other budget that is on the list here is town council, which the legal services budget ought to increase. The level staffing, if you will, has the same number of $175,000 that's budgeted this year. As we've seen consistently that we're closer to, we're over $250,000 a year. We're always hoping that that we can keep the costs down. We budget as though we could, and we can't or don't. And so the mission budget request of $200,000 gets us a little closer. We in recent years have gone from 150 to 175. If we can go to 200.
And logically, we realize the savings in the reserve fund, because that's where it always ends up coming from, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It just seems to me, if the real number is closer to 200, I mean, that's not mission, that's like salaries going up. We know we're going to spend it, so it should be in the budget. Otherwise
Right.
we can't
So we'll
spend it.
so we'll certainly be plugging in the $200,000 figure as the operative one for purposes of bringing.
It's more like an
bringing it
insurance
forward.
cost.
And, but, to some degree, the legal budget is it's reactive. It's not, some of it is proactive. If we have
Hopefully some of it
expenses
is.
for collective, bargaining or strategy or for using town council services for negotiations, but when it comes to defending suits that are brought or initiating
Body
actions,
official.
which we have to take, then those are, then we've got to protect the town's interests and spend the money. So those are those budgets. We also have public buildings, and we have our public bill for public buildings, and Jeff from PMBC. So,
This really isn't their budget. This is
Yeah.
just the maintenance budget for public buildings. And when I say maintenance, it's like electricity, the water, the fuel, the paper supplies, the cleaning supplies, any minor repairs for all of the buildings. This includes not just Shattuck Street, it includes the police station, it includes the fire station. So there's a big umbrella that this would cover. Last year, we were very close. We were slightly over 300,000 in actual expenditures. So I would request the mission budget, I think is more reasonable, at 310,000. It's a slight increase, but more in line with what I think, the actual expenses are.
So again, this is across the whole town.
Except the school bills.
Except the schools.
But this is still just a steady state, this is no improvements of any sort, this is just
This is
keeping
just
things
to
as
keep
they
things
are,
open.
keeping things running.
Keeping lights on and heating on.
Keeping Bill here.
keeping Bill here, keeping Bill happy, that's a full-time job. But it's worth it.
Okay.
So that's that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Keith?
Thank you, Keith.
You did all those, huh? Cool. And then you stay until 1:30? Oh, yeah, okay, good. I was gonna say how that happened, okay, good.
Number 7.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having us. What we did this year is we've taken this, for the capital plan, we took it from the report that EMG produced for us from our facilities study. And initially, Steve Moore is a member of the building committee. He is the person that we pretty much turned over the administrative part of this to. So we have one person doing it. And he came up with this right off of the sheets that EMG provided. So for this year, what he came up with was, initially was $312,429. And then I had a meeting with the school department earlier this week. Steve had to leave on a business trip. And I went over the school department's budget to make sure we weren't double dipping. And sitting with Steve, Mark, and Kelly Clenchy, we found that there was $114,858 that they had in there that we collectively thought should be included in our stuff and not in the school department's. So they took it out of their budget, which they presented to you this morning. We added it to the building committee, which makes it $427,287. Now, this proposal covers all the school buildings, the town hall, and the Houghton building and police station. I can break it down for you if you want.
We had the cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
This morning, Craig came in from the cemetery, and he was saying that there's a problem with HVAC that isn't funded yet.
Right.
But what is funded is the roof replacement or repair.
We expect that roof to be done within the next 2 weeks. We finally got a contract on that.
talk, man.
Quick.
You know, what he's saying is that the HVAC unit needs to be replaced. And the question is, should we do the roof and then secondarily do the HVAC?
Which would involve a cut.
Which would involve a cut. So just so we're not, throwing money away by doing the roof really quick, so somebody could at least close the loop with him.
Well, I didn't get that,
on there.
I didn't get that message from Craig until yesterday at some
Yeah,
point.
no, we heard it.
So
an hour ago, 2 hours ago, so.
I responded to him that he didn't realize that this all just happened that
Right.
fast, that we were going to get this roof done in the next week or two. So I responded to him the fact that cutting in and replacing that unit later on is not an unusual thing, and it's not the worst thing that can happen. We're not concerned about that, and I informed him.
Okay, just so that.
So
the
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so that, if he's putting in for that, which is good, because I didn't have time to get it in our stuff anyhow, so it doesn't matter, as long as we get it in there. To
You're
get
aware of it, and you're not concerned about it.
Right, we're not concerned at all. We're not, again, back to double dipping.
Right.
Fortunately, we found out about it yesterday, so that's not a concern.
Okay, just so we don't miss it, that's all. Good.
So we have a committee together to go over these, so we should convene and probably talk about everything that you're talking about. I don't think this is appropriate at this point. We did it last year, I think.
Prioritize.
Exactly. Let's,
But you've already done that, right?
that was for last year.
No, this is,
No, that,
we kind of did last year's, but this is for the budget coming up, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
right.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
Yeah,
that-
well,
This is for fiscal year 16.
that's a good point, that
We haven't met again.
we haven't.
Correct.
It seems like they've already
PMBC is
done it.
making I think PMBC is making a recommendation, I think.
And then we'll go through and,
Correct.
gotcha.
So one other thing I'll bring up that seems to be a little confusing amongst a lot of people is that we're getting ready to do the upper library roof. That has been an issue, and part of it blew off a while ago. So we're getting ready to get that done. We're trying to get that done this fall as well. But the money that we already have appropriated for that, we still need to do the lower library roof. So we have issues there, and we may be looking to get money to do that at some point,
Where's
which,
that, over the entrance?
lower roof.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture where that.
Maybe in the back? I don't know.
S-bill.
Oh, what roof are we
Where-
talking
what
about?
roof?
The roof that was budgeted, that we're currently trying to get done, that I started communications with the engineer back in June. Anyway, that's the third floor roof.
Okay.
If you're looking at the building though, we're trying to
If you're
visualize.
looking at the building, the third floor roof is obviously the highest portion.
And it's flat, right?
Then the second floor roof is, goes all the way from where the library joins the town hall,
Okay.
over the entrance, and then beyond the entrance and down the left-hand side where the driveway is,
Yeah,
that's all the second floor roof.
okay.
And I'm guessing that the cost to do that will probably be the same as the third floor roof. May not be as much square footage, but it's much busier as far
Right,
as
a lot of
rooftop units,
cuts and angles,
curbing,
yeah.
and things like that. So, if that's budgeted for next year, then the entire building will have a new white roof, the oldest portion of which would be, right now, I think, 4 years old. And the only portion left to do would be the area above the studio. And that area is in pretty good shape. But the second floor library roof needs to be done, because when Jeff mentioned the part of the third floor roof over the stairwell blew off, the wood curbing on the outside was all rotted. And at that time, Gail said chances are the entire roof is in the same situation. So
Gale being Gale
we'll know
Associates.
better
Yeah.
when they get into the third floor roof, how bad it is. But it's all the same age. And it's all been living under the same conditions all these years.
So you're gonna get a quote for the second floor roof and add it to this list? Is that what you're saying? Or-
We're going to have, Gale Associates is working on that now.
Okay.
So they're working on the third floor, the top part of that roof now, and we're going to have them do that lower roof at the same time so we can get it figured in.
Okay.
I don't want to give you a number right now, but as Bill said, it could be as much as what we're looking at, and that's in the 100,000 range now, so
Okay.
obviously we're going to be in that
If
again.
there's gonna be revisions to that list, then obviously we need to make sure that Bonnie gets that and we get it and all
Correct.
that, yeah.
You can see why I wanted Bill to describe that to you. Any other questions you have, I'd be happy to answer.
Probably will talk to you again once you go through your prioritization, obviously, and do that, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
see you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
And please do check into that thing about the roads, whether the software that we, or maybe that's a thing for Steve to do, but see if the software can do that.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
Great.
So we cover those all then in that category?
Yep.
Cool. Kind of schedule. You
Yeah.
want to go, Maureen? You want to go?
I'm here.
You mind if we switch people around?
No?
Come on in. All right, now we gotta find you. Let's
At
see.
19.
19, huh? Okay, 19. Who can sing? Not me.
Got me.
Okay, wrong one.
Very simple.
She's got handouts.
We don't need to.
Leave one here for Joe, too. He'll be back
Oh,
in a few
yeah.
minutes.
I think
got
I have
okay,
enough.
there we
You know
go. Thank
what?
you.
I'm hoping I-
If not, we'll share. It's okay. Do we already, this is an addition, we already have this.
It's
actually a new and improved.
Yeah, we met
New and improved, I
on
can see that.
Thursday evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So,
Your mission didn't change between now and then, right?
no, we just added on the bottom,
Okay.
the 5 priorities.
It's a historical directory, what is that? The buildings in town?
You know about, yeah, there's actually,
Flats and so on?
no, actually, there's a 3 or 4 very large 3-ring binders in the building department. And there was a history taken, I'm thinking it's over 20 years ago, that does list anybody that was possibly built, I think, from like the 18s back. That would be where we would look if something was to come in to be demolished and make sure that, it would get to us to make sure, so it would be in there. So it's just time to revisit it, time to, make sure that the information is accurate, if there's anything been missed. And then what can happen from doing that work is then we can see if anything can be even recognized even more so on a state level or even possibly a national level. So there's definitely some interest in some of the members taking on that.
No?
Yeah.
What's the status of Long Store right now?
Long Store, we are down to 2 architects. We will be forwarding that on over to Bill and Jeff's committee, probably Monday or Tuesday. We met on Thursday night to take the vote on who was 1, who was 2. 2 very, very good applicants. One's local, one's from New York. Both basically, come at it from maybe a little bit of a different direction, but 2 priorities would be, just the time and the access and whatnot. So it goes on to the building guys now. They're going to do some negotiations with these architects and get working on that feasibility.
Is there a location for it at this
Yeah,
point?
we did. We got permission from the Board of Selectmen to have the feasibility done at 306 King Street, which does put 2 of our members not being able to really participate in too much of dialogue on that. That's why we're kind of looking at maybe doing some of these, we have 2 abutters, so maybe these other things that we've listed, can kind of occupy some of that time. And we did take a vote Thursday night also to pursue some CPC funds for this. So that application will be probably started pretty soon. So that's the status with that.
And you told the fire chief he can't use it as training for
I'm thinking, gee, I don't know, who knows what the use of this building will be, you never know.
There was a building there that the fire department did burn down as practice. Back in the day, so we
That
just
would
want to
be
make sure
good.
that
Yeah.
doesn't happen. Probably can't.
But he could do some training of his guys inside once it's built, you see. Could be a facility for that, so, yeah. Turn that around a little bit.
And I saw in here, it talked about the historical cemetery, I think, is that yours or is that somebody else's?
That's going to be us
And is that
also.
the one on King Street, I assume?
The old cemetery, yeah. So one of our members actually had been recently approached by a few citizens saying that things really hadn't been maintained on some of the historical gravestones. So we did a little bit of research and did a little bit of talking. And apparently, once upon a time, there was a workshop person that used to come in and actually get some of the volunteers from Littleton, and they would, demonstrate on how you could maintain and, keep these gravestones. But of course, there was a money to that. It was cut from the budget. So, again, this is another possible CPC application. I did some research, actually, in the town of Stowe. they actually maintain their cemetery very much through CPC funds. So I do need to talk with that individual a little bit more. Just kind of caught him at the elevator and kind of was jogging his mind on that. But it would be a collaboration with cemetery. Donna White did speak with David Badger, and it's definitely something that is needed in town. At this point, it just hasn't, had any
Done for
attention.
years and years,
Yeah,
yeah.
over a decade, apparently. Yeah, so that would be something else.
The
Yeah,
cemetery
so-
tour they did as part of the 300 items, it's Historical Society who all did that, was really very well done.
Yeah,
It was good.
and that is, it's funny, because they do an awful lot of stuff, and we work very close with the society, but we definitely are two different entities at the same time, so there is some confusion, like, oh, why isn't they, and that's, I think, actually when it came up, was because these things were, kind of highlighted through the 300. And we're at we have a really great membership, I have to say. I'm the newest member to the committee, but there's a real interest in kind of bringing it up to the next level and almost becoming an even a little bit more of a higher profile commission in town. These things that we really can do to give back and really preserve the town and other aspects than what, sometimes you commonly hear about a town being preserved, and, yeah. This is good. Yeah.
Interested in the, when you make a decision on the, the folks for the.
Who the architect
for
will
the
be.
architect, yeah.
So that will come through, Bill and, they were on the subcommittee for us, so we'll come through them. So hopefully we'll be on their next agenda, and the negotiations will hopefully go smoothly, and we'll hopefully be able to get a start date. So that feasibility should be coming.
You have the funding for that now already?
We did, we got our CPC
Okay,
funding,
you
yeah.
have it, okay.
So we
So
did
now it
get
really
that.
is just a matter of getting the architect and getting going then? 'cause
For
you
the
got spot
feasibility
and everything
part,
else. Okay, I
yeah.
didn't hear that far along, that's great.
Right, yeah. And that's pretty much us for this year.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming in.
All right, thanks,
I
guys.
have a question,
Oh, hi, Alan.
excuse me.
and it's more to Bonnie. But Memorial Day is still, funding is still in the historic.
Yeah. I put a big
and-
question on that. Did you see my
And it
question?
really should be at veterans, shouldn't it? Or is there some,
It's been like that for,
but
Forever, but I
veterans,
can move it.
veterans agent is the guy who expends the funds. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, we don't touch that 500. We've never touched that. That's why I put a question on
Right,
it,
and-
so that everybody understood that we're really just the 7. not the
Well, that's why
12.
I raised the issue, because it's on there and
It's a line item that ought to be changed.
It ought to be changed.
yeah, we can move that very easily, it's just, it's been there forever. so.
Yeah.
And on behalf of the
You can
commission,
go back
I
and report that
also...
your budget's been cut since you came.
Well, we talked about that on Thursday night. I said, we know that we don't touch that. It's just kind of the way the GLs are kind of set up. But we did want to also publicly thank everybody for the $3,500 that we did receive well, a year ago this time. It's special. That really did help the commission to be able to get to the point where we are with the Long Store, because there was a lot of expenses that actually many of the members were just taking on their own and doing as far as the donation. So receiving that extra money, we were very grateful for, and we actually did utilize it in a very, very positive way. So again, thank you very much for that. And if there's any more, kicking around.
Yeah.
You know where to find us.
Today's not the day to ask that.
Any day you can ask, you should. so.
You might want to get yourself scheduled earlier in the morning.
Yeah.
Right now.
By now.
Actually,
Oh,
you know what,
my
I came strictly from a hockey game, and I can hear someone else texting me like they need a ride somewhere, so I was going all day. I don't know if there's ever a good time for me. So, good?
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very
thanks,
much.
everyone. Bye.
Going back to tab 6.
Is Scott going to come? Did we determine? Did you talk to him?
I sent him an email, but he didn't confirm whether he was going to.
There's some suggestion first he wanted to
Should have grabbed
postpone.
Ogden when he was here.
Right, should have asked.
Right.
You know, if he's not going to come, I noticed it's listed with just water department. Even though we don't approve the budget for light department, I think it's a good idea to get an update on what their operations are like, because they do have articles that come before town meeting too. Made that argument annually. We're not looking to scrutinize, it's an opportunity to educate the public.
All right. You're
The
here,
light
Lauren, you wanna
department
go?
is an important
Is
revenue
Mark coming too,
source.
or you
Yes,
just?
they
Mark's not coming, okay.
We want them to be healthy.
Yeah.
What number, Betsy?
6.
It's 6, that's kind of.
Yep.
Oh,
Number 6, I guess.
Keep
Yeah,
going,
keep
keep
going.
going.
Oh,
keep
it's
going.
behind there, I got it. It's a trick.
It is.
Oh, yeah, ZBA, we're all in here, I think it's one big happy family.
Sort of.
Some days.
Planning board.
Okay, I've taken to introducing myself at some of these regional meetings as the planning department for the town of Littleton.
Okay.
Okay.
Talk about your level staffing, your mission budget.
Okay, certainly. Level staffing would keep me at 35 hours a week. Mission budget would bump me up to 40 hours a week. Certainly, there are a lot of planning activities that could be going on that have been set aside.
For example, give us a little more.
For example, getting the master plan starting right now, the selectmen are, have asked for applications for the steering committee. I think that closed again
19th, right?
yesterday.
Yesterday, we still, I think, only have 2 applications.
Yeah, so, obviously, some more legwork has to be done to get that started. We haven't spent any of those funds yet, even though they were appropriated town meeting last year and then again this fall. So that,
Anything else new or different, or steady state? What's keeping you most busiest these days?
busiest these days. That's the ongoing construction at McIntosh Lane.
Which one's that?
That's the 40A, the subdivision off of Grist Mill
Oh,
Road,
okay.
behind the 40B. We just got done with approving 32-lot open space subdivision on Sanderson, and then a 9-lot open space on Fletcher property.
Fletcher Lane? Oh, the Fletcher.
Fletcher property near the two-park.
Right.
We have the application in front of us, in front of the planning board now for Distribution Center Circle. The peer review contract signed yesterday. It's going well. Meetings have been very busy.
You could probably find something doing the housing production plan too, I should think.
There's a lot, I mean, the need for 5 additional hours for Marin's time, number one. If Marin's willing to take on 5 additional hours, we've got more than 5 hours a week of additional work that Marin and the planning department, as the planning department could do, whether it's in housing, long list of implementation steps in the housing plan that we'd be adopting. It's an extremely busy workload that the planning board has, that Marin has to keep up with, but also there's a lot of other activity that's going on when we have property owners or businesses or whatever contacting the town to see where they could go. A lot of staff time that is spent with being that introduction to be as our permit coordinator, the one-stop shopping. A lot of time.
Yeah, and you both mentioned the master plan, and as soon as that gets off the ground, you're likely going to be principal contact with whoever's consultants, or one of them anyway. That's if we're going to get it done right, there's going to be a time commitment needed.
If we were to talk in terms of an investment in collateral benefits, of everything that we've seen today, 5 hours here is the best bang for the buck.
To bring Marin up to full-time status would be plenty of work that needs to get done.
Yeah, I've been keeping myself busy lately, assisting, covering Conservation Commission.
I was going to ask what the added impact has on you too, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Can you run a triple wide lawnmower?
See what you use,
Can't solve all the problems.
Oh, okay.
Not quite all of them.
Okay.
But on Conservation Commission side of it also, I must have to commend Andrew Samarco, one of the Conservation Commissioners. He's been putting in time every day, 1 to 3 hours every day, doing a lot of the paperwork, helping keeping the office going.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for making the drive for the short visit.
Oh, absolutely.
And aside, do you have an idea of what the building permit is worth on the distribution circle project? It's got to be a few bucks for a 450,000 square foot building.
$160,000?
Are we paying it, or?
No, they pay.
You throwing that in?
Yeah, it was between 150 and 200.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
I had 160.
Planning board was still waiving, or weighing whether they, to what degree they were going to waive the application fee for the site review. The free distribution drive. My point I made during the hearing was that was not part of the financial deal. But that they were going to delay that decision until after town meeting.
Okay.
Because if town meeting hadn't approved the TIF, there would be no need to
decision to make, right. Oh.
So they'll be taking that issue up again.
Hopefully they don't.
And I'm sure they'll make the right decision,
I would hope so.
whatever that is.
Okay, thank you.
So have we contacted some of these other folks?
I've,
We haven't heard back. You've sent out messages, but.
Dan Campbell said she'll be coming down shortly.
Okay.
And I sent notes out to community preservation and Roland, but he's driving up from.
The water department's not coming? Are you not sure? Okay.
I don't
They had
believe-
requested to not come yet because they thought they weren't ready, and we had requested that they come anyway and just talk about their process and where they were and so on, but. So.
Yeah, that's a question, going down the road, another one of those things that we talked about Park and Rec earlier, where a joint meeting with us and the commissioners and the general manager to, just as you just said, go through some of their processes, where they are. Now, they've done that once or twice. I remember maybe 8 months ago in front of the Board of Selectmen, talking about some of the increase in fees and the reasons behind all that. But that requires a bit of a reiteration because if you see some of them are substantial in their increases.
No, when Scott first came on board, he found sort of a mismatch, certainly, to say the least, on the water side. And I think he's doing a really good job of sort of righting that ship. And the budget that he's putting together and has not run by his commissioners yet. I think he was a little uneasy doing it before he ran it by his commissioners. Now, why that couldn't happen in light of us meeting today, I don't know, but I definitely agree with you. I think at least the selectmen and water/light commissioners.
Some of the decisions they will make, and some of them necessitated by the pure fiscal realities of the world today, are going to impact economic development in the town. For the moms and pops, the IBMs of the world, they'll be able to handle some of this stuff.
Right,
But
right.
the small businesses, there's going to be significant impacts. And I think, was it Churchill was quoted with? There was an old man's meeting at the particular time. Gentlemen, we're out of money. Now it's time to think.
We're just waiting on, ZBA planning? No, I mean,
Delay.
Stocking
Andrew
building.
as well.
What are we above?
Yeah.
Water, building.
I don't,
Well,
yeah,
water we're not gonna
I
see.
assume he's not coming, he's not
How
here
about
by now.
ZBA, do you know if they're coming?
Is that separate presentations, Bonnie, do you expect
Sherry
from
gonna come today?
Board of Health, ZBA, or it's just gonna be Roland?
No, I
and-
think it's just gonna be Roland for that.
Okay, and CPC, who's that, Mitt?
Yes.
Pam, you said Pam is on her way.
And said she's coming around.
I'm taking a break. Oh, I get a chance.
And you reached out to Mitt too? We
Yeah.
could have all these people out of here by 2.
Yeah, we could be leaving it too.
We could leave it right now.
We may, we may just leave it. Yeah.
Unofficially, yes, go on, go ahead.
Yeah.
swings.
Huh?
We're not talking any huge items here.
15. 15.
Registry is large.
Tab 15.
And we have
Thank you. Hello.
guards.
It's been so long. Oh, wait.
3 days,
Right.
Was that a late one of the 5 floors? I think it was. How are you? Great. You drive down motorcycle? Oh.
Okay, we're going to reconvene here, our budget reviews, and we've got Pam Campbell here from Elder and Human Services. Very much. Just start talking to us about your level budget and your mission budget and what other priorities and things you want to tell us about.
Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you, because I feel like you've been very good to Elder and Human Services over the last year. And town meeting Wednesday night, when we got the $35,000 for the needs assessment, was just awesome. Having said that, I expect that next year when I come back, I'll have some ideas of things that we should be doing.
Problem with studies, they
I
always
know.
leave it.
Always the way it works. You know, our mission remains the same. It was several years ago that you changed us to Elder and Human Services, and we're responsible not only for seniors in town, but for those in need. And I don't have to tell you that that's going up every year. It seems there are more families with problems, fewer resources that are available. Recently, you may have heard that food stamp benefits were cut. So far, fuel assistance has not been cut, and we've also had some generous donors, so we've been able to help people. But there's still cracks that people fall into. Yes, you can get a subsidized rent. Yes, you can get fuel assistance. Yes, you can get food stamps. But then how do you keep your car running so you can take your sick kid for doctor's appointments, that kind of thing. So that's no surprise. We remain dedicated to, our 5 factors. And increasingly, it has become apparent to me over the last year how important transportation is to support all the others. So we do nutrition, we do our hot lunch program, we do Meals on Wheels. If people can't get to the center for the hot lunch, and just in support of nutrition, transportation gets people to the grocery. Certainly, health and programming, we can do what we can. But again, people need to be able to get to their doctors, they need to be able to get to our blood pressure clinic, get to the wellness fair, things like that. That's transportation. Oh, senior tax relief. You guys were very helpful this year and supportive, and town meeting was as well in giving us a little bit in that direction. And you always have been very generous about the senior tax work-off program, which I see as a real win-win. Granted, the seniors get the benefit of that through abatement, but department after department tells me that if they didn't have those people, there's work that would not get done. They're doing real work for all the departments around town, and I'm very pleased and happy with that program. We had 107 enrolled this year. And every place I go around the state, when I meet with COA directors or I meet with the state people, there's always a double take. And they say, oh, you mean you had 107 hours? No, I had 107 people that were working.
And do you get feedback from the people as well, that it's good for them to
Totally.
something
Totally.
good to do and so on? Helpful.
We don't do means testing, so we take anyone into that program, but it tends to be a lot of people who really need the abatement. This year, it's just under $700.
Do you have enough proper matches for people? Because I know historically some people, they weren't geared toward either maintenance work or clerical work, they wouldn't necessarily have an easy fit. But do you have a good fit for everybody who?
I've taken some steps to try to deal with that. One of the things I have is a big book of job descriptions. We wrote job descriptions for various areas. Don't have anybody who didn't get work in the last year and in this upcoming year. But we've expanded into some different areas. Conservation, for example, uses some guys that really want to get out there and do some invasive plant stuff. Cemetery has always used some people. There tends to be a lot of clerical kinds of tasks, but then you get other things, like I had senior tax workers for the wellness fair setting up tables and dragging stuff in and out, and I know they're helping with the sale this weekend, and we've had a couple of drivers in the transportation program.
What's the minimum age for these people that qualify for this?
You have to be 60, and you have to own your property. You have to own property in Littleton. It can be in a trust, but you have to be a beneficiary of that trust. So my mission budget, I did not ask for anything more. As I said, I truly feel that you've been generous to us. We got 10 extra hours for Tina to do outreach, which has been great, and that time has just been instantly sucked up with her meeting with people and dealing with issues and problems. You know, we had the capital item with the kitchen, which is struggling along, but it's getting there.
I was going to ask that too, yeah.
Yeah, we're in the midst of the contract for the design piece. We had a little delay in getting the contract actually prepared. There was some back and forth, so it kicked off late. I had hoped that it would kick off around August or September, but we're, I think, 3 weeks into it. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, we're getting close to the end. The engineers just came in and did a review. Carl Bryant is the PMBC person. And then, of course, the $16,000 that you are covering out of my salary so that we can take all of the MART money and apply it to drivers is huge. That is really, really great. But, you know, we're still challenged in the transportation end of things. We did 500 rides last month. There are 2 vans out there
500 per
every
month?
day. We did 500 last month. 2 years ago, we did about maybe 180, and everyone said we were busy. At 500, we're really busy.
And what are these mostly, like doctor's appointments?
About 53% are medical, doctors or going for scans and various appointments. Then there's the pharmacy, there's grocery, to the COA, coming for programming at the COA.
We're exploring a number of things with transportation, and we're part of a consortium with 6 other towns, and ultimately we're looking at establishing some kind of fixed routes serving the area. This pilot project that actually, if the grant gets funded, would test drive it, if you will, between Maynard and Acton and Emerson Hospital as sort of the first leg. We're looking at establishing so-called last mile service to connect Littleton Commuter Rail Station with Westford, with Boxborough, with Devens, and with Littleton Common. So there's some, and we've got a number of other towns that are involved. We have business partners that are involved. We don't know what it's going to look like yet, but we're studying it, and our hope is that it will lead to more transportation opportunities for everyone, including seniors. Certainly, as Pam says, when you look at the needs assessment for an elderly population, transportation is going to be critical. There was an article just this morning in the New York Times about how for retirement planning, that with the aging baby boomer population, there's an awful lot of decisions being made about finding, being near their public transportation, being within, earshot of a bus stop or commuter rail or something. And it's a particular challenge in a community like Littleton. We have nothing now apart from no fixed route service, just the on-call. But that's going to be one of the, transportation is definitely one of the challenges that we face and that we're spending a lot of time trying to solve.
So you're going to hear more about that as time goes forward. So as I said, my mission budget is in line with my level funding budget.
You said the extra 10 hours that we were able to allocate for Tina got immediately absorbed.
Yes.
Does that take her from 150% of capacity to only 120? Or, I mean, is that enough, or do you see more need over the next couple of years?
I can see going forward that we're going to need to have perhaps a part-time person to help to, again, hook people up with services. We are the public health arm in Littleton, so people come to us with all kinds of needs, and we hook them up with legal services. We send them to the right people for mental health evaluations, physical, obviously, hook them up with home care and all those kinds of things. And just the more that we have in terms of knowledgeable people to make that happen, the more it happens and the more smoothly it goes. Right now, we're in the midst of fuel assistance, and you would be stunned at the complexity of the forms to get through fuel assistance. Think income taxes, and you're on the right level.
I was talking with Tina yesterday afternoon, and she said, I can't believe the last few years that I've never worked on Fridays, because my day is so full on Fridays, I can't believe it. So she's definitely going to need more help somewhere
over time.
next year or two, yeah.
And I'm sure some of that will come out of your study that you're going to do, but in the meantime, if you could just, your thoughts and give them to Bonnie, because one thing we're trying to do is put together, besides a capital plan, a people plan, because a lot of the departments are saying they can see this coming, so we can kind of get a handle on that going forward.
Yeah. The other thing I'm really interested in is we've started this pre-dementia group. It's a social day program.
And I'm so glad you could all be here for it today.
Pre-dementia, how do we know we call it?
Go pass out applications.
What's the whole legacy?
Oh, man, you guys have had a long day. The pre-dementia group, obviously we don't call it that. Now it's called the Chit Chat Club, but the men want it changed to the Littleton Social Club, which I think is the direction it's going to go. But it offers a respite to families, and for those that are they just can't organize anymore. They can't arrange the van ride. They miss out on activities. They're isolated. They're home alone. They come in 2 mornings. They have activities. I have a contractor who handles that. We provide transportation, obviously, and then they have lunch. One interesting thing is that the lunch people are ecstatic about it because it brings their numbers up, which makes Minuteman really ecstatic. But also people that are in the senior diner remark on them and say, well, they really seem to be having a good time because they are very much a group and they help each other and they support each other and they talk a lot. But the reason I brought that up is that that's a direction that I think I'm going to be asking for help with is someone to actually run programs. We have a very successful social anxiety group, a very loyal group of people who really feel that this helps them to deal with social anxiety. We have our Living Alone group, which has been going on for years and years and years. But the biggest issue we have with all those things is people have to self-select and they have to show up. And I want to do more outreach. I want to get out there more and get people in, but I've also got to have people to run the programs who are reliable. And contractors are great, but it always helps to have your own people, even if they're part-time people.
Which brings up a follow-on issue that's going to be coming up in the near future, and that is, where do you have the room to do all of these things?
You know, with careful scheduling, I still have room to do things.
You do at this point, but I
Yeah.
was saying with the population growing at the rate it's growing and the program's expanding, there's going to be a need beyond the 4 rooms you have in Town Hall. So that's just something to stick back in the back of your minds as something else to compete with all the other things that we need to be concerned with.
How's your attendance at the senior diner? The reason I ask is that a number of years ago, someone told me it was declining.
It was declining, and we've worked very hard to bring it up. We have our special lunch program on Thursdays, which sometimes brings in 20, 25 people. And then with the Chit Chat Club now, on Wednesdays and Thursdays, their numbers are up. And Gail Dalton, who is paid by Minuteman and is our kitchen manager, is getting really good feedback from Minuteman that we are doing well with that program. We've always had a really robust Meals on Wheels. There's been a steady demand for that. But that's separate from what they call the congregate meal, the sit-down meal. Some towns are struggling with that, and they've actually closed programs, or they've pulled staff from programs. We aren't in danger of that at all.
Good.
Minuteman, in fact, uses us as an example, and they sometimes send people to us when Gail's on vacation to get a feel for how we use our volunteers and our senior tax workers.
Ballpark, how many Meals on Wheels go out on a day? Or
Somewhere between 20 and 25, very, very regularly. It kind of goes up and down because, someone's hospitalized, they come home, they may be on Meals on Wheels for a while and then be off, and then there's a lot of just real regular ones. And that program, that program's really good because it's not just that they get the meal, it's the look-see. And we've had a couple of situations where nobody answers the door, nobody answers the phone, and go in and check things out. Also discovered some situations where we've called in, like Neshoba Nursing, to help.
Okay, great.
It takes a village
Sure.
to manage seniors, and there's a complex web of things that can be done. Requires a lot of communication. This year, we just started a hoarding task force. Littleton is one of the towns that has been identified as having that issue, and Neshoba identified 3 towns to work on. Neshoba Nursing, they got a grant, and we have a social worker who's working with us on that. And that's one that comes to light different ways. So there's a 911 call, and they literally cannot get in the door to take care of someone. You call Neshoba Nursing, and we start working. Or Tina goes out to see someone, and or you get a phone call from a neighbor, that kind of thing. And it's a complicated. It's not some people think that the way you deal with hoarding is you just you call 1-800-JUNK and you clean it all out. But it has its own classification. It has its own classification code now in the DSM 5, I guess we're at, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illness, because they recognize that it's a unique illness. And you have to address that. You can't just clean things out. People will just fill things up again. And they also feel a great deal of loss when everything goes out the door. So be careful when you call 1-800-JUNK. You may miss all that stuff, those baseball cards.
Is that somehow more related to elderly, or no, this is across the population?
I would say that yeah, elderly probably. Well, and there's a line. They have a beautiful poster that shows you from 1 to 10, and it's the clutter index. And when you get in the 7, 8, 9, 10s, that's a hoarder. And you get in the 1s, that's fine, 2s, 3s. And the stuff in the middle is what you see a lot in senior homes, where they just have a lot of stuff. We have a presentation next week on decluttering. Decluttering next week.
It's not for me, but for a close neighbor.
What are we talking about,
We actually have a flow chart of what you do, and, depending on what you find, it goes different ways. Yeah.
All right.
And I appreciate the opportunity to just talk with all of you about what we do, because I think sometimes it's quite hidden, unless you have a personal, up-close view of it. And
I had a personal view recently, and it was quite impressed. But you're right. I think most of us have no idea, and the need or what's being actually done already.
Every time you speak,
different.
my eyes are opened, to something new. It's remarkable.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks for doing a great job.
Glad to hear that. That means we're moving in the right direction.
That's right. Get the right person there, too.
Thank you, Paul. I love my job, and I love working with all of you.
Thank Tina for us, too.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
And so next year when I come in, I'll ask for my 16% increase.
Set the bar.
As she leaves.
I was on the tractor, that's why I didn't hear the text. The only increase in my budget was Minuteman, asked for $500 more, but they give us a lot back.
Let's go. Do all the 10 minutes here. Rebels all that like 10 minutes? That's all we want.
It's my glory. Thank you for the ovation. That never happened before. Seldom happens when I walk in a room or on a job site.
Usually it happens just.
Here he comes.
Yeah.
You do get some type of salute.
I get a salute, yes. It's true. I'll give you a quick snapshot of my budget, which is pretty simple. We're level funded, we're level staffed. We have our increases, our step increases. And we have the luxury of having an assistant building inspector in Harvard help me out here. As you know, we're in a little bit of a growth spurt. And my admin assistant has also some assistance from Council on Aging with the person that comes up and helps us. So, but we're pretty straight out. Simply put, that's my budget. I have no mission. We are installing and going live with our software Monday, which is a big step for us. So that'll keep us pretty busy. And aside from that...
What's going to be different from that?
It's going to be, right now, it's going to be in-house, but it'll soon be fully interactive. You'll be able to apply for a building permit, electrical, plumbing, gas, sheet metal, all online from the comfort of your home. Pay for it, and just wait for the outcome until it's issued. Yeah, it's going to be very nice. It's very fluid, and we're pretty proud of it if we can only get it to run.
So is this just a service you get from some other company that's there, so people are logging into some generic site, they're not going to Littleton?
No, it's our site.
It is, it's actually on the
We
Littleton-
purchased the
okay, it's on-
software, and
okay,
we're
all
running
right.
the software.
Okay.
We prefer to do it in-house because we can modify any part of our software ourselves. It's ours. And that was important to me.
Okay.
We have yet...
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Will this have property information?
We have property information on
Online? Wait, can I look up a certain house and say, and this inspection was done on this?
Yes. And that'll be live. If I go out to do an inspection with my iPad, I can type in approved, denied, and what I denied it for, and you can get it live online as I'm doing it.
All right.
Like, how much money do you need?
I wasn't thinking of that.
My life is going to be easier,
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
So simply put, that's my budget. I'll give you a snapshot now of what's happening in town. You probably already know. Across the street here, we have Market Basket that's up and running. We have Building D, E, and F that's going to soon be populated. Building B, which is the second half of Market Basket, I'm not sure when that's going to come online, but they're talking about it. And
Tenants identified for all those spots?
no, but Starbucks and Vitamin Shop is a gimme. There's some type of beautician or barber coming in, and a couple restaurants, but I'm not quite sure who they are.
Yeah, Tavern on the Common.
Yeah, that hasn't been discussed yet, but I don't know where they're going. Right now, they're starting with Building F, the furthest one to the right.
Where Starbucks is?
Starbucks, right on the corner, yep.
That's, Sam Park had announced to the planning board a week or so ago that Building H for hotel would be a courtyard by Marriott. He hopes to get them signed by early in the coming year, and that he's ready. He'll be ready to go forward with I think it was a 9 or 10 screen state-of-the-art.
He said 9 movie theater.
Very nice. So that's the manageable project, as big as it is. The one that's very trying for my department is the 40B. It's not only because it's a lot going on at the same time, but it's moving very, very, very fast. We have 3 contractors, large contractors on a very small site, trying to develop their own corner of the project. You have the garden style, where there are 78 carpenters building this thing up. You have Mark Gallagher building the single-family homes, and then you have the third contractor building the parking garages and the treatment plant. Aside from that, we have a 48 right behind it that's also going to tie into that treatment plant, which is also going. He wants in and out. He wants to build these and get out. So we're accelerated on that corner of the town, and that's really where all the work is right now.
And the only increased resource you have is your assistant?
Yeah, Gabe Valente from Harvard comes over and helps me. He's my relief valve, so if I can't make it, they call him up. So it's working very well. Aside from that, FIBA's up and running. Potpourri's coming to town, apparently. That's my life.
Now, other than the volume of work up at the 40A and B, how's it going? I mean, are you butting heads with them, or are you just having to, are they trying to slip anything by? Or, I mean, is the workmanship shoddy? Is it good? I haven't heard anything other than seeing a bunch of trucks going in.
I wouldn't say they try to slip anything by. I think any new contractor coming to Littleton, there's a learning curve as to what I expect from them and what my department expects from them. We have a lot of new codes since 1996, and not every city and town enforces those codes, simply because they're just not aware of them. We do here, and that's the learning curve, trying to convince them and trying to educate them as to what we want and then how to do it. So that was a little trying at first, but I think we have it now.
Okay, good.
In fact, the single-family homes are probably the biggest challenge, because there's less supervision over a single-family home. My garden style have architects and engineers giving me constant reports. Market Basket gives me constant reports. Any of the commercial projects give me reports. Single-family homes, we're on our own. We have to get out there and look at it.
That involves this question. You're confident in the ability of the department to be able to service everything that's going to go on there in the next year?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I mean, again, like I said, I have an outlet. I'm fortunate to have Gabe. If I didn't have him, we'd be struggling right now.
If we didn't have you, we would be struggling.
Thank you.
I'm very glad that you're here, still here.
We pre-planned for this. We saw this coming. We saw this coming. We saw the 40B and the 40A, and we had a plan in place.
Super, thank you.
And how do we pay Gabe? Did you buy the call, by the hour?
We pay by the visit.
Okay.
And we have a fund for that.
Okay.
That was set up years ago.
Right.
When I had my other two inspectors, electrical, plumbing, and gas, operating out of that line item.
So it's basically, it's an enterprise fund?
It's a revolving fund.
It's still revolving? Okay.
So the fees that come in,
Go in there.
we'll always have a plus in that fund.
Yep.
Based on the fees coming in. And if we don't, we'll raise the fees, but I anticipate that at all.
Great. Okay, super.
Great.
Car's working?
I want to talk some more. No. Yes, the car's working fine. Now that it's in town, it'll last forever. I think I have 4,000 miles on it. It's a year old. But it's working well, yes. Thank you.
Thanks for all you're doing for us.
Yeah,
Okay,
great
thank
job
you.
as
Thank you,
always,
Roland.
Roland.
We have a lot going on. but
Thank you.
it's important that gets done well as well, so thank you.
Don't retire too soon on us.
Well, I was talking to the fire chief, just as a side note, and
Right, is he retired?
no. And we were discussing calls, and he says he can't remember the last call he had that was a full-blown fire here in town. Years ago, when I came here in 1985, we had fires on a regular basis, but little by little, those have gone away. The last fire was Moore Lane, if I'm not mistaken, which was a full fire, and we lost that house. The point I'm trying to make is, the more we push the building codes, the less we're going to have to utilize our fire department for that. And we're pretty proud of that.
Now we're going. Here,
I used
here.
to have a lot of fun calling you at 3 o'clock.
Sometimes I wanted to be here and sometimes I did not.
I could always tell.
Yes.
Both never did.
Yes, that's right, well, that's true too.
Well, thank you.
Thanks
Making
for
the
Thank you
trip.
so much. Thanks for coming in.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Jeff's making a repeat appearance of CPCs. There we go.
There we go. Ah, maybe,
Should've
huh?
just taken him when he was here.
Okay.
Yeah.
That works. Okay.
I was wondering when Roland was done if he was trying to say we didn't need the fire department.
Yeah, right. You know, go back to Scott and say, no, and just think, call Roland.
Thought he was gonna rent it.
20.
2-0.
20.
There's nothing there, so.
Look at that.
Oh,
Okay, there we go.
We jumped ahead though, on ZBA BOH, is there anything to report there, buddy? Because that was under the same
Oh,
line.
well, we got
item.
Jeff here now, so we'll do that after.
Okay.
We got Jeff, let's go for it.
Bye,
Now, let's-
Jim.
about that.
See you Monday.
Oh, bye, Jim.
No, you're not. See you.
Hey, come again.
According
Lauren
to
just asked me.
Betsy's book, I got nothing to report.
All right.
No, we have
I like this budget. What's that?
About the ZBA.
Oh,
I didn't know I was supposed to speak on the ZBA or
I didn't know you were.
or the Board of Health.
But Bonnie can. No.
Okay.
Be glad to. Bye.
Thank you. As the book indicates, we have nothing that we're looking for. What we can talk about briefly is, one, it would be nice to have a finance committee member with the CPC now. with the CPA, the Community Preservation Act being amended last year, the applications have come in more steady. It
Right.
used to be sort of like that backroom nondescript committee people never heard about. You couldn't give money away, but now that's completely changed.
Yeah.
We used to hold open houses and assessment meetings. Nobody came. So it's nice to be busy, but it's gotten ugly too.
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well
Really?
known lately.
You didn't notice?
So that said, it would be nice to have a finance committee member. The last time we talked, the recommendation, I believe it was from Alan, spoke out that we needed to come up with a budget just for this purpose, and in
Yeah,
order to...
long-term plan, I think.
Correct,
Yeah.
thank you. To do that, what we need to do is get the departments that are involved with the Community Preservation Fund, which is Park and Rec, the Historic Commission, Housing Authority. These are the people that get the money. We need to get
Conservation, too.
Conservation. We need to get these people to do their long-range plans, to come to the CPC meetings and say, you know, this is what we need for each one of these down the road. For open space, there's always something going on. Of course, we're all familiar with the Cooper property that's been ongoing for years. We don't know what's going to happen with that. You can't budget for those things. You know it's there. It's hard to plan for it. And there are other properties in town that we know that someday it's going to come to, but we can't really budget for it. We don't know what the costs are.
So what do you, like, if properties become available, do you want to gobble them up?
Well, not all of them. It depends what they are for open space. Again, like
The open space plan we have gives some guidelines for prioritization, because once upon a time, we had like a grab bag random list, which didn't make any sense. So
Right.
now we have, there's some...
We have an open space plan that addresses that. Actually, it's called an open space and recreation plan. It's sort of heavy on open space and light on recreation. But it's an opportunity to do some, to come up with a master plan, if you will, for what the needs are for open space and recreation both. In the discussions that we've had discussions at the Finance Committee meeting and at the Community Preservation Committee, both agreeable to the idea of establishing some sort of a task force or working group or something with representation from CPC, FinCom, and Selectmen to try to come up with the framework for what the rule, the policy, and guidelines would be for integrating CPA funding into the town's financial processes.
Capital prioritization.
Right, have long and short-range plans, so that, we've talked about, so that if, say, a town department at least, or a town board or commission wants to request CPA funding, they ought to have to do that through our annual budgeting process, and then identify the CPA as the proposed funding source, as opposed to what could happen, and we've seen it happen, you stand in line for the CIP, if you don't get it, then you go and stand in a much shorter line for the CPA, where the funding has been, where there's not that much competition for the funding.
Hasn't been.
The idea was, though, especially regarding a long-range fiscal plan, is that if let's just take open space as an example. If we think that we might want to buy $5 million worth of open space over the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, then we need to be crunching numbers and see what would we need to be putting away each year in order to be able to handle the debt service on those, on that kind of expense, so that we can take advantage of it when the time comes. And what's more, if you had that plan in place, and you could have it for housing production, you could have it for historic preservation and recreation, as well as open space. But if you have that master plan in place, then when you get a request that says, hey, I need $100,000 for this, you can say, you know what, that's not what our priority is. We need to keep that money, we need to not spend that money this year because we actually have our eye on, say, Cooper Farm, and would like to make sure that we've saved up a couple of $1 million, or have assembled what the funding plan is, of which a portion could come from CPA
That's the place we
funds.
need to get to.
That, and I feel strongly that any master plan that's done for CPA funds has to involve the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee as well as CPA, because if we, with the adoption of the amended CPA Act by last year's special town meeting and this year's town election, we can be in the business of putting as much money as we choose into the CPA fund to increase the base for the state match. We know the numbers. There's $200,000 a year that goes in from the CPA surcharge. We are allowed to put in twice that amount, another $400,000 up to that limit, to get state matching funds. In a year that we put in $400,000, that's at least $100,000 in state matching funds that we could get simply for putting the money in the right pot. With that kind of money, it really behooves us to figure out what our long-range plan is. But what it also means is that, with all due respect to the CPA, they become the junior partner. That if it's only $200,000 of their money and $400,000 of the town's money, then it's not simply what their plan is for how the money should be spent, but it's also the town's plan. And the way we do that is through the Selectmen and the Finance Committee. But it really opens up an opportunity to develop a plan, have a draft plan, have public hearings, plenty of input, so that we really adopt a community plan for what the long-term needs are. So that when we have the opportunity, say, to buy a piece of open space, the money's there and we're all in agreement on how the money should go in and come out. One other example to use, though, and I won't use turf fields, but I'll use playground, that we want to have a system that people have a high level of confidence in. So we've got a group that wants to replace playground equipment. They're willing to do private fundraising. And they get it, that if they give their private funds to the town, and we put them in the CPA fund, and there's additional matching funds that come from that, that's a good thing.
But they need the surety of knowing.
But they need to know that the money they put in, they get out. And the rules don't guarantee that right now. And
But we can adopt locally things that
we need to come to an absolute level of confidence that that's how it works, by developing some, policies and guidance documents, frankly, so that I would see that the way you address that is to have one article sponsored by the CPC, the Selectmen and the Finance Committee, that not only says you'll take that group's money, but that in the next paragraph you give it back to them. So it's one vote, in, out, and then the only other thing left to talk about is who gets the additional matching funds, right? So, but it's a great problem to have to solve, but it does require an awful lot of communication to take place amongst our boards.
I spent an hour writing that all up and down my arm, and on the palm of my hand, Pete just stole my show.
He just stole the whole show.
He's been doing it all day.
Now I gotta get it off. So, just to add to that some more, the committee realizes that we have homework now, and things that have been discussed is by state statute, we're mandated to put certain percentage of the funds that we acquire, just 10% into the various accounts, and then we put the balance in the budgeted reserve, which can be used on anything. The 10% is the minimum, and we can put in whatever we want, and we're going to look at doing that. We could add, go 10% or 25%. They don't even have to be equal. We could break it up, whatever we need to do or feel we need to do. And that was a discussion recently with the housing, that we may want to bankroll money for housing, because that's another one. You never know what you're going to come up with. So we could start setting aside.
What does that mean? CPC actually buys houses?
Not gonna do repair
No, it's
work.
not for, it's the housing authority.
Okay.
Well,
The senior.
we can.
Or housing trust.
We can put money towards buying,
You could buy, you can
Buy a
use
rental
CPA
property.
funds to purchase property on
Yeah.
which affordable housing would be.
you can buy land with it to build housing on, pretty much anything to do with the
More
housing.
likely repair work, right?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is for repair work. We've already put some funds into some of their buildings, but it comes along, the repairs could come along during the year. We only have two opportunities, the regular town meeting, annual town meeting, and the special town meeting, where we could present that to the town. And if they have something they need in the meantime, that holds them up. So by banking the money, we could earmark money in advance that they could bank and have available to them all year long, so. And then, the last thing I'll bring up is that Keith alluded to it, is how do we break up the money for, say, town departments, various town departments, and applications the citizens may come in with. And Mitt Wanzer, the chairman of the committee, I'm the vice chair, Mitt couldn't make it today. Mitt has an idea, he's kind of talked about putting it into the pieces of the pie and breaking it up that way, and certain percentage of the pie goes to recreation, active recreation, a certain percentage could go to historical society, historic commission, stuff like that. And it's just, we've got to sit down and figure out how it's going to work.
One of the things that we had discussed on that score was that if you adopt a plan, maybe you commit that you'll, that 90% of your funds, at least 90% would go in accordance with the plan, but that you'd have some budget factor in there.
Elbow room.
No more than 10%, say, it might be lower, but pick a number and that as your guide, so that if something comes up out of the blue that is a worthy project but wasn't in the plan, that you have some relief valve to address it.
I'd be happy to answer questions. Be happy to leave.
We'll be seeing more of you in the future, it looks like.
Not today.
No, not today.
This is it for me.
All right.
Okay, good
Thank
luck.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
I think we're.
ZBA, BOH?
Yep.
There are no changes in either budget. They're level staffing. The only thing that's budgeted for an increase is the step increase for the shared admin between Board of Health, ZBA, and Board.
The thing is, when I talked to Sherry briefly.
Yes, she mentioned.
She was gonna look into the rate they charge for the commercial applications, because she thought maybe that could go up, and she said she was gonna check with surrounding towns to see where we were relative to those.
She told me that she was doing the research, but she hadn't gathered all of it here yet, so I'll share that as soon as I get it.
All right, entertain a motion?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Great job, Madam Chair.
Thank you, everybody, thank you.